Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this Facebook Live. I'm so excited. I haven't gone live in a while, and today I have something really special to share with you. I'm going to be sharing a story about how I was able to show up as a visible leader, as an entrepreneur, right? If you're watching this, I'm sure you're a leader of some sort. And we have those times where we're going through so much that it feels nearly impossible, right? To be able to show up. And so I'm going to share with you the story of how I was able to show up even in the midst of grief, financial struggle, and really just so much general heartbreak and a really tough time in my life, and was able to show up powerfully as a visible leader that I am in the midst of it all. And that's really what I want for each and every one of you. And so I'm really hoping that if you're watching, that you watch all the way to the end, that you share in the comments, that you let me know if this resonates, and that we have this open dialogue of what it's really like, because it's not easy being a leader who is committed to showing up authentically and visibly and vulnerably. And there's so many shoulds that we can put on ourselves of what it means to be a leader. And that can cause us to hide. And so I'm just asking that you listen to my story with an open heart and hopefully find some inspiration, no matter what you're going through in life right now that might be telling you the story that you're not good enough to show up, you're not in a place to show up, or you're not, that you have to be X, Y, Z in order to actually be a leader, because it's just not true. So, all right, so this is how to show up powerfully no matter what life or business throws at you, no matter in the midst of it all. So my name is Jess Tomlinson, if we haven't met, and I want to share with you a story about a time a few years ago when I had, well, let's back up to, it is still 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, where I had just moved to Santa Cruz, California. And the move was prompted from Las Vegas because I had a massive pressurized flood that had happened that ended up prompting the move here from my home and my community of over 9 years. It had been almost 10 years there living in Las Vegas. And so I found myself here in this brand new place, and even though I had a few friends, I was, feeling pretty lonely and starting to plug into the community, and got a few clients, did some workshops, and so it was just kind of like easing into my life. And just a few months after that, so that was September, in December, I got a call about my best friend who had been struggling with cancer for about a year, and saying that I needed to get there because it looked like she was going to be dying. And so if you have ever lost anyone, you know just the amount of grief that even the thought of losing them creates. And I ended up flying there and being there to take care of Mary Jane in the last few days of her life and by her bedside. And while that, now I can look back, and it was like one of the hardest times in my life, it was also really just a gift to be able to be there with her and to experience what it's like to be with somebody as they're crossing over. But in the time, of course, like I was in just so much grief. This is my best friend. She just left this planet. And I was there through it all. And really my system had taken on a lot. And after her death, I came back home and was so numb and not sure what to do with myself and unable to run my business and keep up with my bills, and the credit cards that I had from investing over, I've been in business for about 10 years, and things were just piling up, and it was really, really hard. And many nights I, during that time would just sit and numb out and drink wine and binge on Netflix because I literally wasn't able to function in my business. And so it was a really, really hard time. And as you can imagine, I wasn't able to show up visibly. And even though I had, been a visible leader for 10 years. I had a women's group in Las Vegas. I produced 3 TEDx women events. I had multiple speaking gigs that I would do. I was really known as an expert in my field, and was part of the community in Las Vegas. And then I moved here and I'm going through all of this, and I just didn't know how to show up in the midst of this grief. It was really tough. And at the same time as all of this grief is happening, this is December and January and February and March, and I had been invited before I even moved to Santa Cruz to be part of this group of about 40 entrepreneurs who were going to New Zealand on this trip where we went from the South Island in New Zealand to the North Island to live with the Maori tribe to the island of Vanuatu to do water service work. And this was a whole trip, right, that I was invited to come on with other leaders. And the beginning of the trip was in Dunedin, which is a city in New Zealand. And we were putting on an event and inviting the community in a rugby stadium, which was a huge deal, right? So this was part of me going, and we were going to be not only speaking on a stage in a stadium, which was like a dream of mine to speak, like a year prior to that, I had claimed that I wanted to speak in front of thousands of people, and boom, here's this opportunity to actually be able to get in a stadium and share my message. And so I had said yes before all of this stuff had happened, right, to this opportunity. And now here we are, months later after I had said yes, and all this transition had happened, and then the grief of my friend, and I'm literally, barely able to get up off the couch and function and feel like there was even any meaning to showing up and being the leader that I knew I could be. But it was like all of these feelings of like, yeah, but this is not what a leader looks like. And I feel sad, and I feel unfulfilled, and I feel like I have nothing to give or share, because I could barely give anything to myself. And so as you can imagine, during this time, if you've ever been through anything tough, it's just like, oh my God, now I have this thing that I committed to be going to New Zealand to speak on this stage and to be the most visible that I've ever been, and be streamed on Facebook Live to tens of thousands of people at the same time that I'm speaking in a stadium. And I'm just like, like confused. I'm in this state of confusion. Like my soul and my heart knew that I was meant to go and do that. But at the time, I was also in such financial struggle that I'm like, oh my God, I've committed to this, and this has to happen. And yet I was like scraping together, being even, able to buy food at that time. That's how bad it got in my life and my business. And I was in just total scarcity mode. And I remember right before the trip, thank goodness I have a community of other entrepreneurs to plug into, and like so grateful to that community to this day, because I showed up to this event that we have every year, called Money Breakthrough. And hello, here I am, literally feeling the most strapped out of my life, trying to figure out how to even like get to New Zealand, which is happening literally in just a few days from this event, and feeling like I can barely feed myself. And I remember like friends showed up and brought me food, and I just cried and bawled my head off at that event. And I barely went into the room where all of these breakthroughs are happening for people around money, right? And I'm just like sitting outside crying and bawling my head off and thinking like, oh my God, like how am I even going to get myself to New Zealand? And also still like mourning the loss of my friend. And if you've ever been in a tough, financial situation, and also like just a tough emotional situation, maybe you've been through a divorce or grief of your own, or just a life transition where you've, maybe had a baby or gotten married or you've moved, like these are all huge life transitions, or maybe you've been facing like a health crisis. These things alone just really have us question life, right? And oftentimes feel like we just have to like box ourselves in and like, okay, all I can do is just be here. And it makes it really tough to actually show up in our life alone in our life, right? But also in our business, and to see clients and to do what it takes that we need to generate income, or to, sustain the business that maybe we've already created. There can be that problem as well, right? And just even keeping up. And we hide for fear of what everybody else is going to think, and for fear that we're going to be like found out, that we're like this person who is like a real life human, right? If we want to look at it from that perspective, it's like we're all just real life humans, like protecting ourselves from what we're afraid of being found out about, that is actually our humanity. And so during this time of me hiding, and I'm crying at this event, and I finally get up like the energy and the guts to go into this event. And I'm like, all right, even though my eyes are poofy, most people have seen me crying by now, thank goodness I have this community of like crying is welcome. And I find myself back in the room, and I'm like, I'm just going to go in there and sit. Like I gave myself permission to just be however I'm going to be, right? And I'm sitting there, and somebody gets up on stage, and she's sharing, and she's saying that, she is having a really hard time making the request for partnership in business with women that she feels like are better than her, or prettier than her, or wealthier than her. And during these breakthroughs, when these people are on stage working through their stuff, right, what oftentimes happens is that it gets acted out, right? The embodiment piece that is so important when we're working through our blocks around whatever is confronting us. And so the leader that's facilitating this event invites the woman who's working through this block around feeling like she's less than other women who are, prettier, wealthier, more successful, whatever, to look into the audience of our community, and to choose someone that she views as wealthier, better, prettier than her. And I'm just sitting there, just kind of zoned out, feeling the sting in my eyes from all the crying that I'd done, and just sitting there doing my best to just even be in the room. And before I know it, she says, Jess, I choose Jess. And she chose me out of the audience. And during this time, I'm like what? What's happening? And I'm so confused, right? Because like I'm in so much of my own grief. I'm like literally in the most like scarcity I've ever been from not being able to work because my friend has passed away, and I'm in like all of this like, trauma and grief, and like I'm so confused because she just chose me like as prettiest aside, whatever. All I could fixate on was like, oh my gosh, she sees me as like wealthy, like not only wealthy, but the wealthiest woman in this room compared to like her. And she chose me out of all these people in the midst of my like lowest moment, what felt like one of my lowest moments in my whole life. And so I'm getting on stage, and I get to play the role of this woman that is how she sees me, and she doesn't know what's going on in my life, right? And so I got the opportunity to just like fully step into seeing myself in my own visible power, where we did her breakthrough and I got to play that role. And that was right before I made the decision to figure out how I was going to go and be on stage in this rugby stadium in New Zealand, feeling like just moments before that I couldn't do that, both financially or emotionally, right? And here I'm given this opportunity from the universe to show up in somebody else's eyes, how they view me, and to embody what I know is my truth, that in the moment I wasn't able to see or feel until I actually had the opportunity to be invited into that and to remember my inner worth, my inner value, and that I'm able to access that at any time. And even when I'm going through the hardest time in my life. And so in that moment, as I'm completing this opportunity to be of support to this woman who's having her own breakthrough, I'm having my own breakthrough. And I'm getting off the stage and I'm like, damn it. Yes, I am resourceful, even though the money is not reflecting in the bank right now for me to buy that plane ticket to get my ass to New Zealand. I am part of this group of other 40 entrepreneurs that are going. Mind you, I'm also telling myself this story that there's like Tony Robbins coaches going and millionaires going, which there were, and people that were like leaders in their industry that I was putting myself below and telling myself that story, right? Looking for more proof why it wasn't meant for me to go to this thing that I'd been invited to and committed to, and actually done a lot of work around, mind you, because I'd also created my whole talk that I was going to give on the stage. And so in that moment, in the opportunity, I found that gem of power within myself. I found the resourcefulness. And I went back to the room and I took out all my credit cards that had, mind you, just like $30, $100, however much, right? And I pulled together all of my resources and I was able to make it work, where I also, because I used to be in the airline industry, I found, I did my research and I found the best deal possible for me to get my ass to New Zealand. And it was actually, ironically, going to Fiji first and staying in a really crappy hotel. It was like $30 a day or whatever. And then flying to New Zealand. So I got some time alone even, before, to really have a come to Jesus moment with myself of like all my emotions that have been building up, knowing that I'm going to have to step onto that stage in just a few days. So I did it, and I did it very uncomfortably, and I didn't even know how I was going to feed myself on this trip of strangers. I only knew one person who was the whole reason why I went on that trip, and she was the leader, and it was such an amazing experience of tapping back into my own resourcefulness, that no matter what I'm going through at my lowest of the low moments, I can make anything happen in my life if I want it bad enough, if I'm willing to find the resources. And what I know, and what I know you know as well, if you've been through anything like this, is that it doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that there aren't consequences, but what it does is it builds this trust in your ability. And what it did for me was it built this trust in my ability to, no matter what I'm going through, to find my own internal power and my own internal resources, and to lean into the trust in the universe and myself, in the community around me, because I did not get there alone, right? It took the community to actually lift me up to this place and to see me in my worth, for me to be reminded, oh my God, yes, I need to do this. I can buy that plane ticket. I can figure out, I can map out literally every single penny I have, even if it's on credit cards, right? I can do this. And so I eventually get to New Zealand after I have that come to Jesus time in Fiji, which was really hard. Lots of stories in Fiji going on in my head. People who were part of our group also took that flight to Fiji, and were down the street staying in a much nicer hotel, having drinks in the pool, sending me messages saying, where are you? And I was ignoring them because I couldn't pay for a taxi to get down there. I had to save my resources to be able to feed myself at that time. And I was really scared. I was literally having to scrape together what it looked like for me to protect myself and to be able to make it through this month away when I'm not working and when I'm going through all this grief and what looks like a vacation, but is really the biggest challenge of my life, to be able to make it. So here I go from Fiji, landing into New Zealand. I'm in this group of all these strangers, just really being with myself. That's all I could do, was be with myself, and feeling very alone and feeling like nobody understood what I was going through. All these people are, wealthy, and they didn't lose their best friend at the age of 33, and here I am. I was just really feeling sorry for myself and in a lot of grief and sadness, and making myself feel way more alone than I needed to feel, right? How many times have we done that, in your own life and business? Like, we tend to think I'm the only one that understands what I'm going through, which is simply not true, and it just causes way more pain, which I can now see, but I did not see at that time, right? So I'm with this group, feeling very alone, and I get back on our second day to the hotel, and for the first time I connect to Wi-Fi. I'm like, all right, let's see what's going on in the everyday world outside of this. Maybe I'll find some comfort in, people that I do know back home on social media. And as I connect to Wi-Fi, I'm standing in the lobby, and I'm looking at my phone, and I'm seeing all these messages pop up. Whew. Wow, I haven't told the details of this story really out loud. Thank goodness I have a few new friends around me, like people that I'm starting to build relationships with in this group. And I'm so glad that they're around me, because as I'm seeing these messages pop up, they're saying, Jess, did you know that Beth died? And Beth was, the last time I saw her was at Mary Jane's funeral. Mary Jane is the one who was my best friend that I was with as she passed, just 4 months prior to receiving this message that now our other childhood friend, Beth, we were like 3 peas in a pod, who I had just seen briefly, mind you, at Mary Jane's funeral, had suddenly died. And I was just, I'm like, it was like one of those moments. Have you ever had one of these? Share with me in the comments, where you're just like, this has got to be a cosmic joke. Like, really, universe? Really? Like, is this a joke? Like, how many more things do you want to throw at me right now? Like, and all that I could think of besides that, right in that moment, this weird, like, comedic feeling. In addition to that, all that I could think was like, and great, I'm here in New Zealand, across the fucking world, not even able to get to her funeral, not even able to honor this friend who was actually my first best friend in junior high. I remember, I can still picture the day that she was wearing her like Minnie Mouse sweatshirt and blue leggings. And I think I was wearing like a tracksuit, trying to be like cool with like a bun and hoop earrings, our first day of junior high. And it was English class, and she sat right in front of me. And I remember like tapping her on the shoulder and asking her, just starting a conversation. And ever since then, we were really good childhood friends. And so the next day, we're in group with all these, 40 entrepreneurs that I don't really know. And I tell the leader, who is the reason I was on that trip, what had happened, that I had just found out that my other friend died. And I'm so grateful to her, Sprite Loriano, to this day, because that second day of us being in this group, me feeling so alone, me just not even knowing how I was going to make it on this trip, let alone make it on stage the next couple of days. She allowed me to share in the circle, asked me what I needed, and what came out of my mouth was, I just want everybody to hold me. And so I went in the middle of the circle, everybody surrounded me. And then she also asked me, you know, what else do you need? And I said, I just want everybody to sing You Are My Sunshine. I don't know where that came from. And they sang to me. And so what happened in that moment was I started to realize that I didn't have to be alone on this journey, that even though these people were strangers and they might not understand what I was going through, they were there for me, and I could ask for support. And I could remember that each one of these people, I'm sure, had experienced something tough in their life, right? And that we don't have to do it alone. Even if you feel alone, even if you feel like people don't get you, even if you don't know people, people will show up for you if you're willing to be seen, if you're willing to be in your pain and to share how hard it is and to show your heart in these moments and your vulnerability. And it was a big moment for me. And so the next few days, as we're building up to having to do our talks on stage, I felt so much more connected to the group, and people were sharing their stories of death with me and allowing me to share and to process. And everybody kept singing throughout the trip, You Are My Sunshine. People would like randomly burst out, and I was just able on this trip to really just, just be able to receive. And so then we get to our next location, Dunedin, and I'm starting to have all these fears come up. You know, we land in the stadium, and I'm like, holy shit, we're in a big ass stadium. This is crazy. Feeling all these emotions around just like who I should be when I step on that stage, even though I'm going through all this shit in my life, and having all of those familiar blocks that can come up, right? When we are visible leaders or entrepreneurs, or like whatever we've told ourselves the story is of who we're supposed to be in business, how we're supposed to inspire, how we're supposed to move people's hearts, how we're supposed to show up as the expert, how we're supposed to X, Y, Z, right? Fill in the blank right now for yourself. What is that for you? Because we all have something. We all have multiple somethings. I know that for sure. I still know that, even after going through all of this and after my 10 years of being a visible leader and like being able to show up no matter what. And still, I've got these layers because it takes time, right? It takes experiences, it takes healing. So what is it for you? I'm sure you can relate to me that these things come up. And I remember sitting in that big ass stadium on the cold ass. It was so cold, and I don't do well in the cold. I'm like wearing my little red dress and my looking all powerful from the outside, right? I got my red lipstick on, I got my brown leather jacket, and I'm like, yes, I look like a fucking powerful leader. And while I looked that way from the outside, I was sitting alone on that freezing ass bench of the bleachers in the stadium before all the people had funneled in and arrived, just staring at this massive stage, feeling the freezing ass bleacher under my ass, thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna feel exactly this way when I step on stage. I'm not gonna feel my normal, like, you know, amazing, lit up, inspired self. I'm gonna feel like the death that has been all around me. I'm gonna lose my shit. My ice cold heart, because that's what it felt like at the time, from like, you know, angry at God, angry at the universe, angry at just everything. Feeling like I was just gonna break down and make a fool in front of myself, or of myself, in front of not only all these people in the stadium, but tens of thousands of people watching on Facebook Live. Like I was just, you know, my wheels were spinning in worst case scenario. I was like, I'm just gonna fall down on that stage and just like continue crying, because add salt to what was already a wound. My talk was actually all about my friend Mary Jane. Because as she, in her last few days of life, she'd shared with all of us, her biggest fear was that she didn't want to be forgotten, that people were going to forget her. And I made a promise to myself after hearing her say that I would use my platform to continue to share with people about who she was, so that she would live on. And so I knew that that was my opportunity when I had already committed to speak in front of a stage, in front of all these people, in front of all these people on Facebook Live, that I was going to talk about her, that my talk was going to be just a talk of the heart. And so I'd already crafted this amazing talk all about Mary Jane. And now here I was in the grief of our other friend, adding salt to the wound, where I was going to have to get up on stage and talk about our friend who had died. And it was just like, what? Like, what? I can't do this. Like, I'm kind of like going through the wheels of like, you know, not only picturing myself collapsing, but also picturing myself like just completely scrapping this amazing talk and completely letting go of my promise to Mary Jane and just doing what everybody else that day was doing, because everybody else was very new speakers. I was one of the most seasoned speakers. So I prepared for my talk, right? I wrote my talk. Like, I know what it takes to be a public speaker. I have done this multiple times and, you know, coached many speakers. And so I was like, I had my talk dialed in. Everybody else was just kind of like winging it. I was like, all right, I have permission. I have permission to just like wing it like everybody else. And yet there was this moment after all the people had funneled into the stadium, after lots of people had already gone on stage, and I'm watching everybody, you know, share from their heart, give their talks, speak from their inspiration. And it was just about my time to go on, where I felt the coldness beneath my ass on that freaking, I don't know, 30-degree day, whatever it was fucking cold. I felt this warmth come through my whole body and this stillness. And I just came to this sense of like peace. Like, no, I'm going on stage. I'm doing my talk. And it almost felt like in that moment, I didn't have a choice. You know, maybe I now feel like maybe it was Mary Jane that came through me. It was Mary Jane and Beth. Maybe it was God, the universe, whatever it was that came through me. I feel like they like lifted me up and placed me on that stage and reminded me of my own work, what I know I'm here to do on this planet, in the work that I do with women, in the work that I've done with my clients. And what that comes back to is reminding myself and everybody else that giving ourselves permission to be exactly as we are, exactly who we are, and to do away with however we think we're supposed to be in that moment and just be, and use whatever emotions are coming through us in the moment, that is where the magic lies. That is where connection is created with our audiences, with our potential clients, and most of all, within ourselves. And I honestly don't remember my talk that day. I don't remember the words that came out of my mouth, and that's probably a testament to me practicing so much and just knowing it in my bones so that I was able to just show up. But I feel like still something channeled through me, a different kind of power that day than I had ever felt, because I was at the lowest of the low, that there was nothing else for me to be but myself. And that allowed me to have space to channel just this permission, this innate permission to allow it all to flow. And I allowed myself to cry on stage. I allowed myself to be vulnerable. Before I started my talk, I shared what was up for me. And because I did that, I also was able to joke, to laugh, to smile, to allow everything to come through me, because I gave myself permission to not have to just be one thing or be that person that I thought I was supposed to do and push everything aside, and just allow the gift that was there for me in the moment, in my experiences that I had gone through, to flow through me, through my heart, to the audience and to everybody on Facebook Live. And so I got off of that stage that day shaking. Still judging myself, right? Because that's what happens. But also feeling so proud of myself that I did it. And I sat down in those bleachers, again alone by myself, again feeling the cold of the bleacher. The warmth had left, the cold was back, you know, kind of like landing in reality again. And I remember my mom sent me a message on Facebook Messenger and said, "Oh my God, sweetie, that was so amazing." And a couple of my other friends replied and like had commented on the Facebook live stream, and just I was allowing myself to really like fill up on their comments, because like I said, I had no idea what really came out of me on that stage. I just knew I was proud of myself. And then in that moment, as I'm kind of looking at my phone and I'm sitting back with myself, being with myself, kind of processing, one of our videographers, we had trip videographers that were filming our entire journey around New Zealand. And he knelt down with the camera, you know, knelt down beside me. And I'm thinking, what is he doing? He's supposed to be like videoing everybody. And here he is, like making an effort to come over to me. And he knelt down and he looked me in the eyes, and he was just really with me. And he said to me words that still to this day are proof to me that that was the most powerful that I've ever been in my visible leadership. And he said to me, "I don't know how you did that, Jess, with everything that you're going through, but I just really want you to know how powerful you are." And then he walked away. And I was like, who is this guy, right? Because I'm like not really, like I'm kind of plugged into this community of entrepreneurs, but I'm still like in my own little world. And that's a whole other journey for a different Facebook Live that many of you have heard me talk about. But that sweetie, that man, is now my guy, Ben. And so here's what I want you all to know. What I want you to know are 3 things that I really took away from that experience, that I took away from being at the lowest time in my life to feeling the most powerful in my visible leadership. And these 3 things are really the 3 things that I invite you to begin considering in your own life right now, in your own leadership, in your own business. If there are things that are going on or times in your life that have prevented you from showing up because you felt like you should be a certain way, and maybe you're going through that now. And if you're not going through it, you will. You will, because life and business are not separate. And things will show up. And what I don't want is for you to tell yourself a story that because you're not in a space of leadership or who you're supposed to be right now, that you can't show up. And that you know innately that in fact, the times when you are going through things and even at your lowest, yes, take care of yourself. Yes, surround yourself with community. Yes, get yourself support. Yes, maybe you pull back from business and you're not as visible, but do not hide. Please, I beg you, do not hide if you take anything from my story, because people need to hear what you are experiencing and to feel you in all of your perfection, in all of that you are going through now. So here are the 3 things. The sun is beaming down on me. Here are the 3 things that I want you to know about my experience so that you can show up no matter what business or life throws at you. Number one, this was not my first time being visible, right? It was not my first time being visible. I had lots of opportunities. You know, I've been in business for 10 years. I've always been dedicated to being a visible leader, to showing up. This is my work, right? So this was not my first time. It takes practice. And I had opportunities that I believe prepared me to be able to, in this moment, show up the way that I did. So give yourself opportunities. Release the need in those opportunities, right? To have them look a certain way. Just take the opportunity, show up anytime you get an opportunity to be visible. Allow yourself to practice, to build that muscle of being seen so that when you get to a place in your life, because again, if you haven't already, you will. And my guess is you're in this for the long run, right? You've got a vision, you've got a mission, you have a movement that is not going away. When that moment comes, when you are facing a shit show, you can still show up. And you will feel powerful like I did in showing up. And you will be a gift in showing up because you had lots of opportunities to practice. Okay, so start now. The second thing that I want you to know is that up to that point and still to this day, through the last few years since I got on that stage and until the day I die, I will be doing deep inner work to continuously get to know and come home to who I really am and fall in love with that person. And also give myself permission to not have to be who I am not have to fall into somebody other's, some of these other identities that we're told we're supposed to take on, or even these identities that work for other people. And to know who I am and to also know all the layers of who I am. And these different layers are part of my work that I call the feminine leadership archetypes. And they really are examining the full range of our self-expression so that we're not trapped in this box and we feel like we have to be something every single time. We have to fit into our brand, right? We've got to be that thing. That's exhausting, let me tell you, because guess what? First and foremost, you're human. And if you're a woman, you are definitely a different woman every day, mamacita, because we got hormones. And life, right? Like even if you're a dude, like, or a person, or however you identify, we have life and we are constantly changing, growing, and evolving. At least I hope you are. I bet you are, because if you're anything like me, you're committed to growth. So number two is really deeply understanding who you are in all of your forms of self-expression and many layers, and also giving yourself permission to be who you're not. Number three is I have really built safety and trust around my vulnerability, okay? So getting on that stage that day and being vulnerable and allowing myself to cry and sharing what was up for me, it's scary. It feels unsafe sometimes, right? And the only reason that it feels unsafe, if you've experienced feeling unsafe in your own vulnerability, and you've held back maybe from sharing certain things in your life or your business that are stories that could really benefit your people, that could build connection, that could really help them see you as a human and help them get, they understand me, they get me because they have gone through struggles too. If you've held back, first of all, I want to say it's okay. And the only reason that you have is because you haven't built safety around your vulnerability. And that takes support. That takes mentorship from somebody who is a pro in this vulnerability realm, a pro in visibility, a pro in knowing how you can start to feel really, really comfortable and trust yourself in being vulnerable. Because first it starts with inner trust, right? And then there's outer trust pieces that we talk about too that are a little bit more, of boundaries and strategic things that you can do in the way that you show up when you are sharing your story, whether it's on a Facebook Live or a video or an in-person talk or with your clients, whatever that looks like for you. But you got to build that safety and trust within yourself to be vulnerable. And I've done a lot of that work. And I also know when to not be vulnerable, which is really key. So I actually haven't shared this whole story that I'm sharing with you today. It's taken me 2 years. This is probably the longest I've actually processed something to be able to fully feel within myself the processing has occurred and the trust in myself and my vulnerability around sharing this experience with you, especially the financial piece. That felt like a big edge for me to share with you today. So thank you for holding that. And once you do build this safety and trust within yourself, you'll be a badass at showing up vulnerably in your leadership, which your people need. And when you do it within yourself, it feels like liberation if you're doing it in a way that is empowering and is rooted in trust in yourself. Okay? So those are the 3 things. Let me know what one of those resonates most deeply for you in the comments. You can just put a 1 or 2 or 3. I'll recap them real quick. Number 1 is practicing invisible. Number 2 is do the work to know who you are. And number 3 is to build safety and trust around your vulnerability. Just go ahead and drop a 1, 2, or 3 in the comments. I'm really curious which one of those resonates most for you. All right, so in the end, what I want most for you all is to commit to one of those 3 things, all right? Whichever one resonates most for you or you feel like you need to work on the most, commit to that here and now and don't wait. Because you are needed, your message is needed, your heart is needed, all of you is needed, all these parts, your fierce side, your vulnerable sides, your sexy side, your fun side, your playful side, all parts of you and your uniqueness are needed in this moment exactly as you are today. Not how you're gonna be tomorrow or how you were in the past, exactly how all of your experiences and your wisdom and the path that life has led you to has landed you here today. And the second thing that I wish the most for you is to receive support around this. Yes, start doing it today. And as you can see from my journey, it took a lot of support. At the time, I had a private mentor as well that was working me through this. I had that community I told you about that ultimately brought me up on stage and reminded me of my resourcefulness and my worth. And then the third piece was that I invested in myself to go to New Zealand, put myself in this immersive experience where I was held by a community that I didn't feel comfortable in at first, but that ultimately when I opened up, gave me one of the greatest gifts in my life, not only being able to step on that stage in the midst of all my financial strife and my grief, but reconnected me to myself and gifted me with my beautiful partner, Ben, who I believe 100%, if I was not open and willing and really in the place that I was, I would not have seen him for the man he was. I would have not been open to our potential partnership. So I would love to invite you, if you are wanting support, if you're longing for somebody to just see you, which is really my gift, is to see you in all of your wisdom, to mine for the gems, to help you create this safety and trust within yourself so that you can show up no matter what life is throwing at you right now, and especially what life is throwing at you right now. One of my previous clients, Lucia Pavone, I was just talking to her yesterday on the phone, and she said, Jess, you helped me so much in one of the toughest times in my life to be able to share the truth. And that was so liberating. This is what she told me. And she said, you know, it really set me on the path to where I am today, which her business has exploded. And more than just exploded and her having like the best month that she's ever had, best year that she's ever had during our coaching together. And she's continued to grow. More than that, what I'm most proud of is the fact that she said, I feel so liberated now because I'm not holding back. And she can see how it's such a gift to her clients. She's now leaning into these edgier realms of sexual healing. And she attributes that to the path that she was able to take to actually access within her enough safety and trust and liberation to be her full self, to bring out those bold pieces that I could see that she was not bringing out on social media and that she was bringing out with me. And so I want this. I want this for each and every one of you, whatever that looks like. And if you're longing for that support, I would love to be your champion. I would love to jam about what that might look like for you in a private coaching relationship. Right now, I actually have a beautiful client completing right now. And so I've got some space for one more private client to come through. And I'm calling forward those of you who are watching this. If you are resonating and you feel like I might be your gal, then please direct message me. Please drop me a comment that says, Jess, please reach out to me. If you don't want to reach out to me, let me reach out to you. Just let me know that you want to chat, and we can go from there as far as what that might look like and create the support, you know, that's tailored to you for what you're needing most right now in the goals that you have to get from maybe a little bit hiding, you know, maybe even secretly hiding. Maybe you're visible out there and you're doing your social media posts. Maybe you're even doing videos, but there's these pieces, right, that are really key that can make all the difference to your own inner freedom, your own liberation, and also the inspiration that you can bring, the heart connection that you can bring to your clients. So let me know and we'll have a conversation. We'll jam back and forth, and it feels like, if it feels good to you, we'll hop on the phone and create something that will be supportive for you. I really love to not just take people through like a systematic formulaic system, because visibility is, as you can see and as I know you know, so much deeper than that. So let's create a partnership of a journey that works specifically for you and the unique, beautiful, visible leader that you are. All right, loves, I'm excited to hear from those of you who are resonating. If you are not, then I love you and thank you so much for watching. And if you feel like this could resonate with somebody else, I would really love and be so, so grateful if you would share this video with your fellow peeps, or, you know, share it just with one person who you know might need to hear this message today. Because one thing that I am 100% certain on is feminine leadership and leaning into all of who we are, bringing more pieces of our vulnerability, our playfulness, our sexiness, our fierceness to the table is literally what it's going to take to change the world. And I love you so much for doing this work, because it ain't always easy, right? It ain't always all rainbow sprinkles and like cupcakes and all that jazz. So thank you for doing the work. I love you guys so much, and I'm excited to talk soon.